Hello, this is Craig Wescoe recording for TCGplayer.com, and today we're going to play Blue-White Hatebears. So I've been playing around with various spirits builds in Modern, so Esper spirits, Bant spirits, Blue-White spirits, trying to take advantage of Spell Queller and like Drog Skull Captain, things like that. But really the two spirits that have been most impressive to me are Spell Queller and Mausoleum Wanderer. And then in sideboard games, also Selfless Spirit. The card's also been good, countering things like Anger of the Gods, Supreme Verdict, whatnot. But really, I'm in search of the best Spell Queller deck in Modern. That's kind of what I'm doing right now in Modern. And this might be it. I like this deck. It's similar to Green-White Hatebears in that it has like the Thalia Guardian of Thraben, it has Leonin and Arbiter, and the Arbiter with the Ghost Quarter combo to basically strip mine their land. Also works great with Path to Exile for the Arbiter because they just exiles any creature for 1 mana and they don't get the land. Also, what the blue splash gives you is Reflector Mage. So Reflector Mage is a great removal spell in this style of deck. So Spell Queller is tempo oriented. It counters the spell, gives you a flyer, and it's not forever. It's only as soon as until they draw a removal spell for the Queller, then they get their card back. So you really have to capitalize on that tempo. You can't just sit around with the Queller. Restoration Angel is a sweet interaction with the Queller because a lot of times the opponent just doesn't cast a spell into your Queller on their turn, and they just say go. And if you just play the Queller and then start attacking with it, it forces them to do something. So then the next turn they're like, okay, he played his Queller, I have to cast a spell, otherwise I'm just going to get run over by this flyer. And so they cast their spell, and then you Restoration Angel, blink the Queller, and now you Queller that spell. So now you have 5 power worth of flying attackers, and now they're just kind of like, uh-oh, now I'm in trouble. So Restoration Angel also works great with Reflector Mage. So the opponent plays their Tarmogoyf or whatever, you Reflector Mage it, you attack with your Thalia or your Arbiter, whatever card you have in play, and then when they replay their Tarmogoyf or whatever creature, you then play Restoration Angel, blink the Reflector Mage to put their Tarmogoyf back in their hand, or whatever creature they have. And Flicker Wisp also works great with Reflector Mage, because you can flicker your Reflector Mage to get the Reflect effect again. And then you can Restoration Angel the Flicker Wisp as well for incidental value. Especially on their upkeep, you could do the trick of Flicker or Restoration Angel my Flicker Wisp on your upkeep, or on my own end step to blink out your land, and then it doesn't come back till their end step. So those are some neat tricks that this deck affords, and I like some of the synergies, the kind of subtle synergies with this deck, where you have Thalia making them pay an extra mana to cast their spells, and then you have Mausoleum Wanderer, which in this deck is really just a slight upgrade to Judge's Familiar, because the only other spirit we have is Spell Queller. So I'm not even sure that it is better than Judge's Familiar. It's pretty much exactly as good, because the upside is that it gets bigger with the Spell Queller and able to counter more things that way, or in multiples. If you cast a second Wanderer, you could attack for 2 with the first one. Also works with Moorland Haunt, so I can exile a creature from my graveyard, make a spirit in response to their spell, and then sack the Wanderer to make them pay 2 if they're trying to play around it. So it's just kind of like maybe slightly better than Judge's Familiar, which if Wanderer didn't exist, I'd probably just be playing the Judge's Familiar in that slot, which a lot of mono-white Hatebears decks do. So I'm just kind of playing it. You can't cast it off planes, but that's the only drawback that the Wanderer has over Judge's Familiar. So I really like the synergy there. Thalia makes them pay 1 more, and then Wanderer will counter the spell unless they pay another 1. And so Thalia and Wanderer individually or together forces the opponent to cast their spells later than they would like, which plays right into the Spell Queller, because now I have 3 mana open and I can Queller your spell that you tapped all this mana to cast to try to, resolve it through these cards. So there's a lot of synergy that way, and then we're also choking them on mana. The Arbiter keeps their fetch lands from operating the way they want them to, and then Ghost Quarter, in conjunction with the Arbiter, keeps them low on lands, so that plays right into the Wanderer's ability to counter their spells, Thalia keeping them from casting their spells, and then Queller being able to counter any spell they can play, because they're probably not going to be able to play and resolve a spell that costs like 5 or 6 mana when you have a Thalia and a Wanderer on the battlefield. So the only spells they're really able to resolve are going to be Queller, at least non-creature spells. So if they cast a creature spell, then we have 4 Path to Exile and 4 Reflector Mage to deal with it, in addition to the Quellers. So this deck basically has a pretty tight squeeze on what it's allowing the opponent to do. So I'm kind of a big fan of this style of deck. I'm not entirely sure if this is better than some Spirit's approach, but it's been very good for me so far. We also get Colonnade, which is a pretty sweet land to have. The mana base, other than that, is pretty much the same as Green-White Hatebears. Slight downgrade, I guess considerable downgrade, but a downgrade. You have to play Addercar Waste instead of Horizon Canopy, because there's no blue-white equivalent to Horizon Canopy, and this is the only other, or it's the best blue-white land other than Hallowed Fountain and Seachrome Coast. So we're just doing that, and then we're running 1 Mystic Gate just as a way of, fixing our mana here. Now in the sideboard, we have Sunlance, which is great against any of the Wild Nacatl, Goblin Guide decks, good against Merfolk, good against Infect. Just kind of this, in general, strong card to have against a lot of the decks in the format. Meddling Mage, great against combo decks, also good in conjunction with cards like Reflector Mage. So I'm willing to bring this in more liberally. I'm really considering it main deck, and if I do, I would want to play some number of Gitaxian Probes, because I can Gitaxian Probe, see what they have in their hand, then Meddling Mage, the card I don't want them to cast from their hand, or the card they have multiples of in their hand. So the Gitaxian Probe would just allow me to get better value out of the Meddling Mage. And then, of course, there's the Reflector Mage, Meddling Mage combo. And then also Gitaxian Probe would help with Spell Queller, so it would let me know what spell I really need to counter. So this kind of comes in against any combo deck, and it can come in anywhere, but it's against Living End, Scape Shift, things like that, Ad Nauseam. Selfless Spirit comes in against Supreme Verdict, Anger of the Gods, and it's kind of the other more versatile sideboard card. Meddling Mage and Selfless Spirit just kind of can come in anytime I want to board out cards. Sometimes Wanderer isn't very good, or having 4 Reflector Mage, 4 Path is just too much removal, so I'll just bring in more creatures in some matchups. Stony Silence is for Tron, Eggs, mostly Affinity. It's kind of a nombo with our Ether Vial, so a lot of times I'll side out the Vial when I side in the Stony Silence. But that's just kind of a powerful sideboard card right now. My favorite card in the board right now is Rest in Peace. There's Dredge is becoming a much more popular deck, so Rest in Peace can stop that pretty effectively. And then it also just has a lot of value. It's really good against Tarmogoyf type decks. It's good against any sort of graveyard combo deck, so whether it's Living End or Goryo's Vengeance or the Malira sacrificing my guys to gain infinite life type deck. So it just comes in a lot of matchups, and we're running it over Grafdigger's Cage because Grafdigger's Cage stops Ether Vial, and also, so mostly because it stops Vial. Does it? Wait, Grafdigger's Cage says can't play cards from graveyard. Creatures can't come in from graveyard or library. That might be something to consider. So anyway, Rest in Peace is just a strong card right now anyway. And then Gitaxian Probe, like I said, is the card I'm really considering if I run main deck Meddling Mage. But again, I'm not sure what to cut. The flex spots in the deck right now are 1 Spellskite and 1 Phantasmal Image. So Spellskite, you can do some cool things. It's to protect Spell Queller primarily. Also really good against Infect, Boggle, things like that. And with Phantasmal Image, you can do a lot of sweet things. If you have a Vial on 2, you can Vial in the image and copy Spell Queller to counter their spell, or you could just gain value by doing any sort of other things. You could copy your Reflector Mage to keep the pressure going that way. You can copy Flicker Wisp, Restoration Angel. If the opponent pays 2 to sacrifice their fetch land when you have an Arbiter, you can Vial in an image and copy the Arbiter, and then they can't search because you have a second Arbiter that they would have to pay for. So there's just, I'm not sure if either of these cards are right to be main. They're just kind of cards that I'm testing out as placeholders. Another card I could play is Snapcaster Mage. We don't have a lot of spells to buy back. We just have Path to Exile, and we would have Gitaxian Probe, potentially. Mana Leak is another card to consider. It's pretty much a hard counter in this deck, because there's no way they could cast their spell and pay 3, given the amount of restrictive resources we have, like Thalia, Wanderer, Ghost Quarter, things like that. But anyway, this deck, the numbers might not be perfect yet. I'm still testing it, but this is a good place to start, I think, for blue-white Hatebears. So let's see how it goes.